Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Okay, let's do a quick little rambling, catch up on a couple of things. First off, the doggy door is now installed. She's happy as a lark to have it. It's nice to have a door back in there. It did cut down the opening that I can pass through and you know who can pass through, but the dog has a little more room now and she probably needed it more than we did. So, anyway, it's tolerable. We'll see how it works as time goes on. I didn't paint it though. It's just the weather's bad to do painting. So I just paint it when it comes springtime. You know, it just drops in and out. If you want to know how I made it, there's the doggy door on an earlier video. I showed you the one from here in the shop. And it's the same thing. It's the width of them is based on how big a door you're using. So, and the height and the thickness is dictated by the sliding door itself. So, but she does fit through this one a lot better. Anyway, I'm glad it's done and in place, and life is back to where she can come and go as she wants. So that was kind of a pain for a week while we were trying to get that sorted out. Second thing is that at the first of the year, I promised that I would do a video series on something that I have not done yet this year. It's almost over. You know what that was? I'll give you a hint. Yes, it's the bandsaw boxes. These are two of my most unusual, distinctive, I should say, that I've made over the years, and I've made hundreds of them at least, and maybe even thousands. I've made a lot of bandsaw boxes. I've done a lot of mistakes. So I thought I would do a series on making the whole bottle. How you make them, how you could change the looks of it, how to overcome certain mistakes if you make them, because you're going to make mistakes. Making a bandsaw box, in my opinion, is really fun because I can make a whole bandsaw box and never touch any kind of measuring device. So, anyway, we'll get into that on my next video. I think is when I'll do the first one in the series, and it'll be about these two in particular. And I think you'll like that when you see these up close, what's going on. So, the other thing I want to talk about today was Putton, one of my viewers. He asked me in my last video, hold on one second, no more, go on. Sorry, she was getting very aggressive and she'd be barking here in a minute. So, she wants a toy and I don't have one here. So, anyway, he asked me, he says, that Ryobi power box you made, he says, what for? What are you going to do with it? And I thought about it for a couple of days, and I finally responded and told him, I said, well, I have a short answer and a long answer. I said, let me do a video and I'll explain it to you the long version way. But first, the short version, why did I make it? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but half the fun is I'll figure that out as I go. So anyway, we'll figure out what it's used for and what I can and can't do with it as we go along. I'm still learning about this stuff and how you can really utilize that tool battery, these Ryobi batteries, to the fullest potential. So, and I'm coming up with new ideas about how we can do some of the things that we're going to do. So, stay tuned for that. But I'm really anxious to try to learn a lot of things about these batteries, because I've already been very surprised by how many amps I can pull off one of those batteries. And somebody out there that knows more about the calculating this stuff than I do. But my understanding is you take the volts and you take the amount of amps and then you multiply it by whatever voltage. You take whatever amps you get out of this battery. In this case, I got 11 amps out of it, let's say. These little Ryobi batteries. That's a lot. But if I got 11 amps out of them at 20 volts, how many watts am I going to get out of that at 110 volts. I know that at 20 volts, 11 amps, that would be what? 220 watts that it would give me. But how many watts is that going to give me in the through the inverter? I don't quite understand how that works, I guess, because if I calculate right, 11 amps at 110 volts is a little over 1100 watts. So I'm very curious about that. So if somebody can explain that to me, I really would like to hear it, because I think I'm confused by that somewhere. Anyway, that's what that was about. I wanted to explain to you, Button, why I'm doing it. There's a lot of things I want to learn about these, because I also think I would love to make if I can get any kind of amperage out of this thing, in which case I can get a lot of watts, I might be able to put 4 or 5 of these 9 amp hour batteries together and come up with a pretty good sizable battery pack that I could charge them up in a very short period. I could actually charge those up in under 2 hours with my battery charger, which is another thing that I've been learning about is what can you charge them at? What kind of rate can I charge them at without damaging them? And I'm still kind of looking at that too. So there's so much I don't know about these batteries that Ryobi apparently keeps secret, or everybody does, because I've not seen anybody do any real experiments with these Ryobi batteries and see what they're really capable of. But most of the time, they're just sitting in the shop. I use them on power tools as I use the power tool. But when the power goes out, there's a nice source of power right there. I have sitting on that shelf in all those Ryobi batteries. I have what? Somewhere around 50 watt hours, 50 amp hours of battery that I should be able to convert to power while I don't have power here if I want to utilize that. So that's kind of why I'm making these things, is that when the power goes out, I can grab those, and for at least a short period of time, I would be able to keep some things running around the house. So that's the long answer. I hope this explained it. I hope you guys learned something here. If you have any thoughts about any of this, any ideas, any suggestions, I'm always open to it. One more thing about the power thing. I actually am thinking too that I bought a generator, 8,000 watt generator. And that's incorporated into my trying to survive here off grid. If I lose my power for several days, that power, a generator, is something I would have to turn to. That's why I bought that gas caddy. So I have enough gas sitting there at all times to be able to run that for a period of time until I can regroup and go to step 2. So anyway, that whole generator, you don't have to have something like that. You could actually, believe it or not, and I think it was Chevy maybe, that made a power station that runs off the vehicle. So when you start the vehicle up, the amperage that the alternator puts out, it takes that power and diverts it to a power outlet at the back of the pickup so that you could plug things in there and run. I believe it was 2,000 watts is what he was pulling out of there, but I'm not sure about that, what that was. And what would a vehicle normally do? I'm still looking at that, and I suspect it'll be very noticeable, but I think that for a few dollars, if you were to change out a standard factory alternator with a high output alternator, you could put a power station right in your vehicle so that if you get power to go out, you ought to be able to plug in an extension cord there, run it into the house, and run some of the necessities off of those power cords right from your car while it's running, using your high output alternator. Now again, you could probably do that with the standard alternator, but you're not going to get near what you could get if you go to the high amp alternator. So these are things I'm kind of thinking about, because when it comes to being in fogs, forced off-grid survival, and I talk about all these different ideas that I have for that, turning your vehicle into an instant generator would be a very handy thing to be able to do. And yes, you could do it just by buying a cheap inverter and alligator clip one and clipping it up, and you'll get a certain amount of wattage that way. But if you set it up right, you could get quite a bit of power out of there, enough to run a lot of things within your house. Like I said, probably close to what probably a 1,500 or 2,000 watt generator would give you. So it could be quite a bit in a pinch. So setting your car up to be able to do that is probably not a bad way to do it, rather than having to store a generator somewhere. And you can still get that instant power if you need it. So I'm thinking about figuring ways to turn my vehicle into a emergency use power generator, in ways I can do that on top of all the other things that I've got going. So anyway, electrical power is really something I really like to do. It started with trying to figure out what to do with those batteries, and I realized that, hey, I also have a problem with not having power out here at times. Those actually come in handy. It all kind of blends together over time. So, and the car generator idea, that's just another one that I have that nobody ever talks about. And I wonder, why can't you do that? Why not? You could. Couple extension cords and buy a couple of inverters from a store, and you would instantly have your power inverter, like I talked about. So I think there's things to do, and I think you could probably do different things ideas that you can have when you're forced off grid. And I'm hoping other people catch on and start coming up with some of the ideas that I don't think about, and we just kind of work on for each other till we get to get it a lot further along. So sometimes it's hard to think outside the box alone. You got to take your ideas from somebody else and move it out further. So anyway, now I'm rambling. Oh, wait a minute. I was the whole time, wasn't I? I do appreciate you stopping by. If you have any thoughts about this, ideas, suggestions, I do read them all. I enjoy it. If you learned something here, you like this video, hit that like button. Lets me know that I'm doing the right thing. Foghorn. Must be a boat going by. It's winter. The furnace is now howling again in the background. Anyway, most importantly, please come back again because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you guys again very soon.